Mumbai, India was bustling with activity. People bustled along the streets, laughing and talking, while cars zoomed by at lightning speed. Susan, though, wasn't participating in the hustle and bustle. Instead, she stood on the sidewalk, staring blankly into space, lost in her own thoughts. It was a hot and humid day, and Susan was clad in her usual attire, a tattered, old dress that barely covered her skin. Her hair was unkempt and dirty thanks to the lack of proper washroom access. Susan had been living on the streets for months now. Her mother had died when she was very young, and her father had abandoned her and her siblings to fend for themselves. And so, they had to fend for themselves in the harsh realities of life on the streets. They slept on cardboard boxes, scraped together what little they could get from the trash, and begged for food. Susan had managed to land a job as a maid in a rich person's house, but her earnings were never enough to cover basic necessities. She was frequently cheated and mistreated by her employers, and she knew that she needed a better life. One day, she stumbled upon a small NGO that was actively engaged in providing support to street children like her. They gave her a small syrup to keep her warm at night, gave her food and blankets, and encouraged her to get in touch with NGOs that could provide her with a proper home. Susan was hesitant at first. She had no idea where to go or who to talk to. But she was persistent, and eventually, someone from the NGO reached out to her. The NGO arranged for Susan to be admitted into a life skills program run by a local NGO. She learned how to read and write, how to budget her money, and how to avoid pitfalls that could lead her into a life of destitution. Susan worked hard at the program and managed to finish with flying colors. She received scholarships and grants that enabled her to attend a professional training program, where she learned more employable skills like accounting and commercial photography. Susan was on the path to a better life. She had a small apartment of her own and a steady income, and she had managed to put her painful past behind her. She had a purpose and a direction, and she knew that she could make a difference in her life. One day, the manager of the apartment building where Susan lived overheard her talking about the struggles she had faced on the streets. He learned about her past, and he was moved by her story. He decided to do something to help Susan, and he began his own philanthropic efforts to raise money for street children like her. He asked some of his friends and colleagues to join in, and soon, they were making donations to various charities that provided support to street children. Susan was overjoyed. She had never felt so loved and cared for, and she knew that this was going to be the start of a beautiful, new chapter in her life. And so, she continued to work hard, to dream big, and to make her mark on the world. She became an advocate for street children, speaking out against their exploitation and hardships, and she was a beacon of hope for many other poor children who had lost their way in the midst of a hard world. In the end, Susan's determination and perseverance paid off, and she managed to build a better life for herself. She may have started as a poor, struggling girl on the streets, but she ended up becoming someone who inspired others to never give up, no matter how hard life gets.